I'm going to give a rundown of what I've been doing during November. The very start of November, we had an additional meeting of the Transport and Environment Committee, and Eula has done an amazing thread on Twitter giving a rundown of everything that we did that day. But just a couple of highlights from me. One was that she proposed and I seconded an amendment on George Street to ask that we reconsider looking at whether to bring in street trees into that design during the next phase of design. I was unfortunately not successful in bringing forward an emergency motion about unsafe driver behaviour near to Leith Walk, where drivers have been ignoring traffic signals and traffic signs and making illegal turns, which were taking place to start with during the Green Man phase of the pedestrian crossing. The traffic lights were then rephased, but they were still doing it illegally when they weren't supposed to, and not everybody crosses during the Green Man, so actually still quite dangerous for them to go through signs that say not to. So unfortunately the convener chose not to take that emergency motion. However, I'm going to look at this motion again, and we will come back to it in December, but just not as an emergency. The issue isn't going away, so that's okay. I did tons of training this month. I had very few formal committee meetings, so took the chance to do lots and lots of training. So some of the things that I did training on were risk management, poverty, huge topic, the promise, carbon literacy, procurement, and audit and assurance in the context of health and social care. So absolutely tons of training. I also did lots of in-between kind of stuff that I wanted to get done in between committee meetings. So I went to a whistleblowing workshop with other members of the GRBV committee, because we're looking at processes for whistleblowers and in terms of the issues that whistleblowers raise. I also went to a really good workshop for the members of the Integration Joint Board, which is the Health and Social Care Board, about the cost of living crisis, and that was a fantastic workshop, really thought-provoking, lots of really good ideas coming out of that. I set up and carried out quite a few one-to-one meetings on health and social care as well. So I've been meeting a range of different officers who are working in health and social care. I've also met some of the partner organisations, and I also visited Parliament to meet Gillian to talk about the issues there as well. So lots of interesting meetings. I also did quite a few ward meetings this month. So I went to meet Roddy Smith, who runs the business improvement district in the city centre called Essential Edinburgh. And we had a really long and interesting debate about how we should spend the money raised by tourist levy, the transient visitor levy. We didn't completely agree, but it was really interesting to talk about the reasons that we both held, the views that we held, and share that with one another. I went to both Old Town and Newtown Community Council meetings. Also attended a meeting with other ward councillors regarding where tour buses are placed in the city centre, and went to the meeting of all parties that oversees the delivery of the winter festivals, just because there's been some problems obviously this year, more of which to come. So those meetings are taking place every fortnight at the moment. So I missed one because I was double booked, but I went to one last week. But yes, in terms of winter festivals, as I'm recording this, it's just after I've been at the GRBV committee this morning. That's the Group Risk Invest Value Committee. And what that effectively is a committee which looks backwards and looks over what the council has done, how it's done it, how well it's done it, and makes sure that the council is doing things the right way, the proper way, and with good value for money, etc. So we brought an emergency motion to the last meeting of that committee in regards to the failure of the contract that the council had taken out with Angel Events to deliver Christmas events. So a report was back to the committee today about that, and I tabled an amendment because I've identified that there was an issue with the public procurement rules that meant that the council couldn't go back to Angel Events and say, we think that your bid for this is really out of range of what we would expect it to be. Please show us your calculations and your workings so that we can understand how you've come to that figure. Basically do due diligence on the amount that they were bidding. Under public procurement rules, we weren't allowed to do that. What we could do was go back to them and say, is that figure correct? Is that what you meant to say? But they came back and said, yes, we meant to bid that amount. So that felt like a massive error to me in public procurement rules. So got an amendment today, agreed by committee, that the council is going to get in touch with the minister who's responsible and say, we've found a big problem with procurement, here's why it's a problem, here's what went wrong in Edinburgh with our process, please can we change this? So I'm quite pleased that I've managed to identify and pinpoint the exact thing which caused this problem, and find an action that we can all agree on, that we can hopefully change that and make sure that that doesn't happen again. It doesn't solve the problem of what happened, but it does say, okay, like we would like this not to happen again. And then finally, in between all of those meetings and different sessions, I've been doing an absolute ton of work to learn more about the health and social care landscape in Scotland. So I joined the Integration Joint Board this summer, and I wasn't a member of that before, so I've had to do a lot of learning about how that works and how it should work. We've also got the National Care Service on the horizon. The bill is going through Parliament, and that will be something which will transition from the Integration Joint Board into a National Care Service Care Board, if that bill goes through. So I'm trying to work out, one, how can we make that bill better, and what does that mean for Edinburgh, and is that something which we're supportive of, and what can we make sure that we do to make that as successful as possible. But two, in the current world, in the Integration Joint Board world where I am currently, what can we do to make sure that we are providing the best health and social care that we can with the budgets that are available? And there's a real debate going on about whether we invest short-term money to make provision of care to everybody who requires it, which obviously seems like a no-brainer, but we don't have enough money for that. Or do we invest money to make long-term transformative changes that will then reduce demand, have more need met in the community, change the way that we work so that services are more efficient? But all of that change costs money, and takes the money that would carry out short-term, gap-filling care. So there's a huge piece of work there, which all is tied up with the budgeting cycle, and also the fact that in Edinburgh, the Integration Joint Board, which runs health and social care, set an unbalanced budget for this year that we're currently in. And although it is meeting that at the moment and trying to reach a balanced budget by the year end, it is running a deficit as planned, which is a huge risk, because if it doesn't meet a balanced budget by the year end, that deficit gets rolled over into the following year, and then it's even further out of balance. So really risky times for health and social care in terms of funding and the unmet need of people in the community who really need support, and in particular facing into the winter season, where the demand for care will be peaking, obviously, because that's what happens during winter seasons. So scary times. I'm doing my best to learn as much as I can about this so that I can then hopefully start to bring some proposals into that setting, and hopefully try to make a difference as a member of that board. But as a new member of that board, obviously this is, for me, a lot of learning right now before putting my foot in it and saying something and maybe not getting everything completely right. So I'm trying to make sure that I know as much as possible so I can make the best contribution that I possibly can there. So that's been the main focus of my work during November.